This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Hey guys, welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. Thank you for joining us. This is episode number 110. If you're new to the show, basically just have police officers on, just like the intro said, the men and women of law enforcement, and they just tell their stories unedited, unabashed, so you can hear what it's like, what they actually deal with on the job. Thank you for all the recent rating and reviewing on iTunes. I appreciate that, or not iTunes, Apple Podcasts. 5-star review if you haven't done it. It is so appreciated. I want to start right at the top here and thank the donators to the show, the people that keep the lights on, that keep things going, the Patreon sergeants. So if you didn't know, you can support the show at Patreon. The link's in the show notes, and you can also go to thingspolicec.com. And if you become, there's 2 tiers. If you become a sergeant for TPS, then you get read out at roll call. So without further ado, who I'm talking about is Dylan Perozic, John Good, the great Sarah Pomeroy, Lauren Stimson, Christian Hijalti Sigurdsson. I'm pretty sure that's Iceland. Thank you, sir. Alex Wazik, Brandon Hooker, Jake Pinito, John Shoemaker, James Rose, Benjamin Noriko, Seth Wright, Tony Fahey, the great Bill Broadway, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you, sir or ma'am, Andy Biggs, Jeremy Woods, Chris June, Adam Nihal, the great Gary Steiner, the one and only Lane Campbell, and I got a couple more on a different list. Stand by. I'm talking about, it ran out. The list is getting too long. There we go. David Viveros, Ricardo Zuniga, the great Thomas Connell, Luke Ervig, Corey Payne, Jacob Ruth, Rich Emery, Scott O'Donnell, and the great David Diaz. Thank you, folks. Thank you. A million thanks. I love you. I'm in love with you. You show your support monthly. You keep the show going, and I really appreciate it. I get really excited when I see there's a new patron for Patreon supporting the show. So thanks. So today's episode is going to be a good one. We got a Tennessee gentleman from the great state of Tennessee. You know I'm fond of it. We vacationed there this year. It's a beautiful place, and they don't screw around in the South. They do some policing. I don't know if they're having the issues we're having with numbers. Probably not, because they actually like their police officers. So very excited to have Bill. We're going to go with Bill because he's active on the job for one of the largest agencies in Tennessee. He's got 2 years on. He works patrol. He's a Spanish speaker, but a white guy, which I think is interesting. And I think they even teach it in their police academy. So it's going to be a good one. He's got the stories. He's going to bring the heat. Without further ado, let me bring Bill on. Bill, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, what's up?
It's good to have you, man. Spanish speaker.
Yep.
That's interesting to me. And I had asked you before, I said, because you look like a white guy. And I said, well, yeah, you could still be from a Hispanic family. But you said nay. You are Spanish speaker. And how'd you get that accomplished? You're just super bright?
So when I was 15 years old, there was this girl that I liked. And
yes, I like this story already.
And she didn't speak a whole lot of English, but she spoke Spanish. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to learn Spanish. That lasted for about a month when she promptly just completely rejected me out of her life, whatever. Okay. But I discovered that I enjoyed learning languages. So from there on out, I've studied Spanish, French, and I can navigate in Portuguese.
Wow.
But I've actually studied abroad in both Spain and France. I've been to Mexico. And I really try to involve myself with the Spanish-speaking community here in town.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big part of it, right? The more you use it, the more fluent you become, right? Kind of submersion.
That's very true. But Spanish has got all kinds of different, dialects, and people saying all kinds of different stuff. And, something can be a normal word in Spain that means like to go screw somebody in Mexico, which like actually is a thing. So you just have to you have to watch it. So
yeah, I bet, especially when you're dealing with people on the road. I visited a buddy of mine overseas when I was in college. He was in Madrid, and he spoke Spanish as well fluently. And I noticed the Madrid Spanish, everybody, it was like had a lisp, like como te llamas. Everybody, they said a king back in the day had a terrible speech impediment, and he forced people to speak with a lisp. Is that true? Do you know?
No, it actually comes from how the Latin evolved into Spanish over there.
Okay.
So I really can't get into that more.
So it wasn't like an honorary king that forced everybody to have a lisp.
Yeah, like that's a myth. But there actually there are rules to it about how different lisps work as well.
Really?
Yeah. So sometimes you almost make a th sound.
Yeah.
And sometimes you make like a sh sound. But it depends on the vowels that are around the word.
Damn,
so
you know
I'm
about
not
the
best at
language.
it because most of the Spanish I speak comes from Latin America, and they don't really have that over there. There's a different form of lisp in some countries. It just kind of depends on who you are. But there is a system to it. It's just you have to really go far deep into phonetics to really understand it. So
yeah, I mean, I took Spanish in high school, and listening to these guys talk, I thought the first couple of guys I met, I was like, geez, it's so weird that everybody has a lisp.
Yeah.
Or these two guys I met have a lisp. My buddy's like, no, that's just how they sound. And he also had an Italian roommate who, and I never knew this, he moved and lived with him in Madrid, and this guy was able to learn Spanish in like 2 months because Italian and Spanish were so close. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, most Romance languages all they have the same alphabet, aside from a few letters. But a lot of the systems work the same. So like in English, we technically have a subjunctive and like a simple present, but we don't conjugate the verbs differently for the most part in English, so we don't really understand the difference. And it works differently in English. In the Romance languages, you have, a subjunctive tense. You have different ways to conjugate the past tense. You have different actual past tense. And so when you get that system in one language, you can really understand it well in other languages.
So that's what's going on.
And then so really the problem you get once you really get a Romance language down is to move on to the phonetics. So like how to actually say stuff.
Wow. I feel so dumb right now. I think people have obviously different gifts, but in high school, like I so badly wanted to learn Spanish and I just couldn't. And I'm also bad at math. I don't know if the two things are related for your brain, but when I went to Spain and I learned how to like ask for like, a ham sandwich and a couple other things, like they don't have like coffee. They have Americanos, because they said like during World War II, American soldiers were over there and they wanted a coffee and people in Europe drink espresso. So
so just pour water in it.
Yeah. They like these Americans want their espresso watered down. There's the Americano. I thought that was cool. But I did notice while they're like ordering and hafting, like when you have to use the language, like these people didn't speak English, a lot of them, or it was very bad. It did help me learn it. I think I'd have to be like a submersion person. I'd have to like just by survival, maybe then my brain would kick in. So different departments do it differently. I know in California, if you're a Spanish speaker, to get kind of like certified, they send you to a college professor or at a university. There's a bunch of them on a list you can go to, and he has a conversation with you, and then he will actually certify you as a Spanish speaker. And now, you can take statements, you can testify and all that because you've been given the old blessing. Is it the same way in Tennessee?
It just depends on the agency. So for us, we technically have a list of all the Spanish speakers, and you have to go take this test.
Okay.
But the problem with that is if you do that, then you get on call. There's a rotation for on call people.
Oh no.
And so if you get your certification, it's like, but I don't want to be on call. But if it comes up in court and someone asks you, me like, hey, how can we verify that this guy knows Spanish? Well, I mean, I have a degree in it. I can talk about, all the different, I can give the court evidence, like tangible evidence as to, how I can actually speak Spanish.
Kind of like my cousin Vinny when she talks about all the different motors, and they're like, all right, you're a mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and really with court, you just kind of have to treat it like you're presenting everything that you say you have to prove. And so it's like you're giving a project at school, and everything that you present, someone asks you a question, and you have to be able to back it up and back it up and back it up. And so if I had to, I could go to court and say, hey, I have a degree in Spanish. I know Spanish.
Right.
Once again, my conversational ability in Spanish is probably not what most native speakers is, like up to the 100% all the way up there. But I mean, I've written basically a small book in Spanish. And so I can write it really well, and I know the grammar. Sometimes I may not know a word just because I'm not a native speaker. And there are different words for different things, and, different countries use different words for different things.
Sure.
And so it's just, you can't say you know all of English because, what if I ask someone to define truncate? You know what I'm saying? Like, most people can't do that.
Right.
Some people can, but it's like you can't really say you know all of English. There's different levels of understanding it.
So you're telling me not only do I not know Spanish, I also don't know English. That's great.
But what I'm saying is everyone needs to be humble and saying that they understand the language. Like you really don't,
Right.
you know a whole lot less than you think you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look at people from England. They're going to say a bunch of words that I remember my buddy went to England, and a guy asked him if he could pinch a fag,
Yeah.
and he was like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? He wanted a cigarette. And I think a fag is like a bundle of sticks that gets lit on fire. So it's something to do with fire.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it evolved over there. Completely, it's like a different language when they're talking their different dialects in England. So, or like Cockney, or it can get to the point where you can't even actually understand anything if you get like Scotland and Northern Ireland and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're absolutely right. Bill, let's get down to brass tacks here. Let's ask the questions. Can you tell us about your first hot call that you went on? Got your blood pumping.
Okay. So my very first hot call was, I believe it was my second day of FTO. So currently where I work in the city, I work closer to the county more than anything. So I'm out in the sticks a lot. I'm out in the trailer parks, in the
single wide land.
We have I believe our area of town, our sector, which has 5 districts inside of it, is the largest. It has the largest discrepancy between officers to square miles.
Okay.
So we have the most amount of ground to cover, but statistically, I believe we have the least amount of crime. But when I was working in FTO, for the most part, I was in the middle of the hood. And so
makes sense. They want to get you like exposed to as much as possible, probably.
Exactly. Like, I didn't grow up around like a lot of crime, really. I grew up with good parents, in a good family,
Right.
which I'm very grateful for. And so, you know, I think they saw that in me and they wanted to get me out, you know, really exposed to some of this stuff.
A little culture shock.
Exactly. And so, so my very first hot call, came in as an unknown 911. And basically someone had called 911 and there was a lot of music and they really couldn't tell what was going on. But it was at the address of a bar in town, or his nightclub. And, so we go there and another officer had gotten on scene first. And once again, I don't know where I am. I don't know what's going on. I'm new to the city. So, you know, I'm still trying to figure out where I am. And, this other officer gets on scene first, and then he gets on the radio and says, "Hey, I need another unit right now." And so my FTO is driving, and he looks to me and he's like, "Where are we?" I don't know. And
that's like the cardinal thing they do on FTL. Like, where are you right now?
and we were right across the street from what was going on. And so this guy is holding down this. So the officer is holding down this other guy. And so I look, my FTO runs up to him, and I realize what's going on. So I run up to him, and we put hands on this guy, get him into handcuffs. And the other officer gets a gun out of his back pocket. And so I didn't realize, you know, there was a gun there until I was holding one of his hands. Right.
Right.
And so we get him cuffed up. He is super drunk. We get him pat down, have him take a seat. And he's talking all this craziness about, you know, how he is, you know, he's what's his nuts, and he's from he come by the way of South Carolina, and he's talking stupid.
Right.
And so we have him take a seat, and we go and talk to the people at the bar as like what happened. Basically the owner of the bar and the security guard said that this guy had gotten pretty intoxicated. And he had ordered some chicken wings at the little, you know, restaurant bar area.
Makes sense.
And yeah. And so it had been, you know, 20, 30 minutes, and the guy was getting mad that he wasn't getting his chicken wings.
So far, I'm on this guy's side.
Yeah. And so the security guard tells us basically, like, you know, he's really mad that this guy's like getting really mad, like, you know, yelling and screaming about not getting his food. And he says to the security guard, "I got something for you," and then goes out to his car. And the security guard watches him go out to his car. He's like, because he knows what "I got something for you" means.
He's
right?
like, he's not getting something nice for me.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not getting some flowers or chocolates. Right. You know, so he goes out and he grabs a gun out of his car, takes the gun and pops a round off into pops a round off in the air across the street where his car's parked. And he's yelling. Yeah, I mean, he's yelling like "F you," and he's trying to shoot the gun again.
Ooh!
But the gun is so jammed and messed up and whatever that he's not able to shoot another round because it's so, you know, messed up. So he takes the gun and he has to like physically rack it to get the next round out. Right.
Yeah.
And so he says that, I believe he says he tries to point the gun, shoot it at the security guards, doesn't fire, racks it, puts it in his pocket, and goes over to the bar. After security guard watched him, you know, yeah, idiot, right? So that's when the other officer was getting on scene, when they were yelling at each other. Didn't realize, you know, what had just happened. So the security guard is like, this guy's got a gun, he's pointing at me, whatever. So the other officer goes to put him into custody. He's not really, really resisting, but that's as we're getting on scene, right? And so I didn't realize how serious that was until after, right?
Thank goodness. Yeah, it's almost better to find out later.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. But that was my first time, like, really having a situation like that in front of me.
Yeah, and you're like, wow, people out here in these streets are kind of nuts.
Yeah, they're stupid, yeah, and once again, it's like, it's not everybody, but there are a lot of people that do a lot of dumb stuff. I mean, that was over chicken wings,
Yeah.
And now you're going to jail for attempted murder, this idiot. So
yeah, it's like you said, man, you had a good raising. It's your parents' role in your life is super important for how you're
100%.
going to turn out. I mean, I've repeated that before when I talked to people when I worked in LA, and I would talk to officers at lunch, and they would talk about how they grew up in the ghetto, South LA or East LA or wherever. And the one thread through the whole thing was they had both their parents, and their parents would not let them play on the street.
Mm-hmm.
There was no like getting out of school and meeting up with the homies and, hanging. It was either you're in a program or you come home, do your homework, and we're going to, it's even not even that hard. You just need to pay attention to your kids and what they're doing, That's I mean, I saw a funny thing the other day, talk about boomers, like OK Boomer, that whole stupid thing that got popular. There was PSAs when I was a kid, because they say the boomer generation was very hands off in a lot of ways. And they played an old PSA, and it was like, does anybody remember this from the 80s when you were, because I was an 80s kid, and it was, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your kids are? This aired nationally, like everywhere. It was almost like, hey, guys, we got to start keeping track of our kids.
Yeah. Well, bad parenting really got trendy in the 50s with Dr. Spock and his book about how to raise your kids. And
my mom had that book.
Really?
Yes, I remember Dr. Spock. Yep.
Yeah. Horse crap. It is horse crap. It's not how you raise kids. Kids are something that, they're not a blank slate. You have to, the values that your kids have, for the most part, are going to come from you by either what you tell them, but mostly from your actions, right? So,
who they spend a lot of time with. If you send them to a bad public school, you could be screwed. Like that's like we homeschool, and I tell people we homeschool because I'm going to be the one to indoctrinate my kids with my ideas, because I think my ideas are good. I don't want
classroom is not the free marketplace of ideas.
Right? Yeah. Like we don't need to get up on a tangent here, but I think we all know that all of a sudden talking politics and activism in schools is like cool. It's okay. It's like that never happened to me in the 80s and 90s when I was in school. It was like a teacher, you would have an idea, but they'd never talk about their relationships. They never talked about like boyfriends, husbands, wives. They never talked about their sexual orientation. They never talked about and it seemed like politics then too was more of like a Coke and Pepsi type of deal. It was like, Republican, Democrat, whatever. No one was trying to kill each other. But that's a tangent, Bill. Sorry for that. But and you as a police officer in a metropolitan area, you're dealing with the after effects of that. You're dealing with what that produces.
And there's a lot of people that think the police are can go in and be a permanent solution. Right. And we're not. Like police are a Band-Aid all the time. Police are a Band-Aid. And so we're there to.
We're the end. We're like the end all. We're at the end of this whole situation.
And people say, I need you to go scare my kids straight. I tell them, no, that is not my job. I am not a counselor. It is your job to be the parent. And so I can talk to your kid for about 5 minutes, and it may have an effect for about a day. And then they're going to go back to doing what they're going to do if you let them. Yeah.
I remember we had people come in the lobby. We had missing kid. They just got lost on their bikes. It was Cape Cod in the summer. It's crazy. And the mom brought the kids in, and she was like, I really want you to have a talk, give them a talking to. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't have a problem talking about like bicycle safety and in like knowing about your whereabouts and kind of helping them be safer. But I'm not going to like, admonish your kids for you. I'm not going to like, because that's what you want. You want them to think the police are the guy that comes and you want them to come to you if they need help. You don't want them to be afraid of you. Like, oh, here's the big bad policeman. It's parents. And then the police are like the ultimate punisher. So I do the same thing. I'd be like, I'm not going to scare your kids for you. I mean, she was like, I want you to talk about how long it took you to find them, how worried you were, how much money and assets the town spent looking for them. I was like, lady, maybe I should give you that. I'll give you that talk. Why don't you know where your kids are going? But that's I'm with you, man. That's the days of doing that are way over. It's not good.
Yeah,
definitely no good. Well, that's a good first hot call. Gun involved. Guys fired the gun. I mean, so he essentially had a jam, tried to shoot the guy. So you guys charge him with attempted murder or assault with a deadly weapon or what?
I can't remember. So in Tennessee, we don't have like assault with deadly weapon. It's either assault or aggravated assault. There's no other. And so it's just, I think it was felony reckless, aggravated assault, disorderly, and resisting arrest, and some other stuff. But funny story. So when he got down to jail, he decided that that's when he was going to fight.
Good.
And so
good place to do that. The guards will kick your ass.
So I don't think you've really talked about this that much, but jail's a different animal. It is. My first time going to jail was with that guy. And so he gets down to jail, and we missed like this very small bag of marijuana in his pocket. And so he takes the little marijuana out from behind his cuffs, and he throws it in the little counter at the horseshoe at the front of intake. And he's like, "F you, all you officers," and whatever. And so they, because he had marijuana, then he gets strip searched. So we take the handcuffs off him. The jailers take him back to the strip search room. I always say that.
I've said that before. If you want to learn how to do a really good pat down, watch the guys at the jail.
Yes, 100%. Because they miss something, then their jobs, and
right.
The jail needs people so bad. I don't think they're going to get fired, but they're going to hear about it for the next 2 years.
Sure.
And so they take him to the strip search room, and in the strip search room, I hear just bang, 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 bang. This guy's fighting. They're going at it. And then I suddenly see this guy come out of the strip search room head first, out the door, and then go directly into the ground because he's trying to lunge away from him.
Yeah.
And they grab him up and go to take him to the back. There's this big steel door that's between intake and booking, which is this next area of jail. And they sling that door open, and he tries to lunge again, and he lunges directly. His collarbone goes directly into that steel door, and I believe it, broke his collarbone, and like it was bad. And so I don't know whatever happened after that, because that's not my job. We did our little affidavit and got out of there. But he was being stupid. He was very drunk too. So
yeah. Alcohol is. I mean, it's like I tell people that all the time. I like to have a cocktail now and then. I'm not down on alcohol, but I will say about 90% of people you arrest are usually there's alcohol on board. Like it's always alcohol or drugs is always a big player. Like to the point where like when I get somebody sober, like if it's a warrant or something, it's like, wow, this is weird. Like it's nice and easy to fingerprint you. You're not like moving around. Yeah, man, you don't mess around at the jail. Those guys are I mean, dude, how do they keep people working there? Honestly, I mean,
I know
it to me is my least favorite part of the job happens at the jail. Prisoner watch, deep searches, spending a lot of time with the perp. Like I don't like any of that. Where I work now is cool because it's like it's a very small agency in the sticks, but we're on a county board with all these other agencies, and there's a county jail. So we literally we can book them at our place and then take them to the jail. We don't even have a holding cell.
Really?
Or the jail actually set up a little side room for us to book. So we could actually just book there and then give them to the jail. It's the place I worked before here. We had a lockup and everything else, and prisoner watch sucks. It's such a pain when you get somebody who's like suicidal or just nuts or is flinging stuff. It's like, that's your headache for the next, your whole shift. Yeah.
Well, here we can, sometimes it's a race to get the MIT in, the mitmus. So if I bring somebody in who's like really, really drunk, or is really high,
they don't
not
like that
overdose,
jail,
but
right?
they're really, really high. Then what you do is, if you can get your affidavit done quick enough and get it to the intake, and then once the intake officer has been presented with the MIT, and if they have to go to the hospital, it's now on the jail. And so if
so you don't have to send it, you don't have to go with them to the hospital and all that.
Exactly. But if it's urgent enough that you have to go to the hospital, then, we take care of it until the MIT has been done. I don't know how it works in other states, but basically in Tennessee, once the mitmus is presented, once it's been signed, the jail owns that person until they bond out.
The jails here have a little bit more freedom. Like the county I'm in, they're good with taking people, but they don't really want overly drunk people. And where I worked before was a much more populated area, and the jail would straight up say no. Like if they know you have a lockup and you have someone real drunk or high, but they don't need medical, they're just out of their mind. Yeah. They just won't take them. There's that little dance where you get a crazy OUI. It's the guy's third OUI, so it's a felony, and he's gonna be with you for the weekend. So you're like, hey, they're like, what was he arrested for? Well, OUI. And they're like, oh, how drunk is he? Oh, it's not so bad. And you try to downplay it, and then you bring it to him, and he's like, holding up a piece of spaghetti. Yeah, and they're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like your jail's they are a little bit more committed to that, which you think they should be. That's their bread and butter. They're a jail.
And they do a great job. Like, once again, jail, I have so much respect for those guys. And that is, if I could go back and redo how I did my life leading up to law enforcement, I would have tried to have worked in a jail before going to be a police, because
it's a good first step.
100%. It's more of a controlled environment.
You learn the culture of criminals.
Yeah, you deal with a bunch of turds all day long,
Right.
And so you get to know how to talk to people.
Their lingo,
because
and all that.
Yeah, like once again, like you in this job, you will have so many more wins talking to people the right way than just throwing people in handcuffs. Like you do not know the background to these people out here.
That's come up before on the show, and we've said the jail guys that get on the road that want to go and become deputies have a head and shoulders a foot up on everybody else, because they already know how to talk to these guys. And it is hard when you get a real hardened criminal or somebody from a real bad part of the inner city. Sometimes you don't even know what their language is like. So different than what you're used to. You don't even know what they're talking about. You don't really know how to talk to them. It's almost like they think you're silly the way you're talking to them. It's like, because they're so ghetto, it's
or they're so inculcated in whatever culture.
Right.
So I've even dealt with it in Spanish. I've dealt with MS-13, how they talk, and it is the same way. It's very different. So
that must throw them off when you show up and then Spanish starts coming out of your mouth.
Yeah,
they're like, what?
I've multiple times I've showed up at some whatever call, and 9 out of 10 times I'll speak English to them at the beginning, just to see if they were.
Oh, it must be so cool to listen to them talk if they're talking Spanish and they don't know Spanish.
Yes, exactly. Like because.
So what are they really thinking? What's their plan? You can hear them say it.
Like one time, this was also an FTO. We had a car that was wrecked. It hit a pole, and someone else called in saying that this car was wrecked and this dude ran off. And so we get there, and the windshield is busted in. There's a crater in the front of the windshield, the size of a cantaloupe, obviously where this guy hit his head. And there's blood. We look inside the car, and there's Modelo and lime and tequila just all over there. So what it was some Hispanic guy crashed his car while drunk, ran away because he didn't want the DUI.
Pretty standard.
And so, yeah. And so then normally what they do is a couple hours later, they'll call in and say, hey, I got carjacked by two black guys every time. Carjacked by two black guys. Right. All the time. And whenever they call us in. And so we get a call a couple hours later. This dude said he got carjacked by two black guys. So we get out there.
It's the go-to.
And yeah, like every time I've done one of these, for whatever reason, two black guys. And so we get out there, and I'm outside the house. They don't know I'm there. And this guy is saying in Spanish to the rest of his family there, I'm about to lie to the police. I'm about to get out of this, right? So he says it in Spanish. And so in Tennessee, filing false police reports is a felony.
Oh, wow.
And so we go in there. He tells his BS story, and I'm like, okay. So I believe like what happened is he did it a little bit in broken English, and then we did it again in Spanish. And then I'm like, okay, you're under arrest. And his whole family is like, what's going on? I'm like, I heard you saying you're going to lie to all of us out here. I'm not stupid.
Dude, that's priceless. That's like the Seinfeld episode when they're afraid the Koreans are speaking bad about Elaine at the nail salon.
I've actually never seen Seinfeld, so
okay. She sends in like I think it's George Costanza's dad knows Korean because he was in the Korean War, so he goes in and listens to them all talking smack about her. But same principle.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
dude, that's awesome, man. Yeah. Wish I knew another language. I know Pig Latin pretty good. I don't want to brag, but I'm pretty good at the old Pig Latin.
Actually, my next the next question you have actually relates to
a strange or bizarre moment.
No, the adrenaline dump.
Oh yeah, we have to do strange and bizarre first.
Okay, all right.
We have to start. There's no rules, dude. You can do that. You can do the terrifying or most intense call.
Okay. So I had gotten a call from my sergeant before work. This is summer of last year. And basically he said, hey, Bill, you need to come into work early. We've got this guy claiming that he's been raped. And he only speaks English or Spanish, right? Mm. And so I get in service early, go out there, and this guy is standing on the road. He had flagged down somebody else from a construction site that he was working at. And he said to this guy, call 911. Best he could in English, call 911. And so we get out there, and he talks to me, and basically he tells me that in Spanish, he had been kidnapped and raped by 15 guys.
Youth.
And so we're like, okay, let's do what we can. Yeah. And so he goes into the ambulance, and they go to a hospital.
Get an exam.
And I call the sex crimes detective, tell him what's going on. And he says, okay, we're going to go talk to this guy, see what his story is. Some of our Homeland Security guys are trying to get in on this because, if it's a dude who got kidnapped and raped by 15 guys and he's an immigrant. Like that has to do with national security, and so they're wanting to get in on this. And so I'm like, okay, let's go talk to him. Let's do the interview, and then we'll go from there. So we get there, and I actually know this sex crime detective pretty well. I'd worked with him a couple of times beforehand, and he's been on the job 20-something years. I'm new, so in some ways he has really shown me different ways how to do investigations, like how to really keep stuff. Like I don't know if you've done investigations. I've only helped, but like how to make sure evidence is categorized, make sure you know what you're bringing into a crime scene, make sure you're writing down times on everything,
right?
Just different tidbits. And we go in, we talk to this guy, and basically this guy says, I have been basically he says that he had been kidnapped the previous night. Some other Spanish-speaking guys or Hispanic guys had shown up while he was at a gas station, blindfolded him, and thrown him in a van.
Damn. Drove
him down the street, threw him into a hotel room, and 15 guys, he says 15, like over and over, had raped him, filling up all his holes. I mean, just,
my goodness,
brutally raped by 15 guys, right? Swears up and down. And so they, and I asked him, like, so what happened after that? And so basically he says like something around like they knocked him out or something, and then they dropped him off back where they found him. Which, I mean, I'm kind of like, okay, that doesn't sound, once again, you try to believe people.
That would be very, very, very rare.
Yeah. Like, I'm like,
yeah.
And so, we bring everybody in to do the whole forensic interview. They do take DNA and whatever. So he goes into the hospital room, and he's in the ER room for a couple hours, and he comes out of the room and he's like, "Hey, I hear my son out there." I'm like, "Okay, you're just where?" And he goes, "Outside." I'm like, "How'd you hear it?" "From inside the hotel, from inside the hospital room." "But your son's not out there." And so I'm starting to think, okay, this guy's maybe a mental health consumer, but I'm not sure. I can't prove anything.
Right.
And so he does
spidey sense.
Yeah. But like nothing's like going off like this guy's dangerous. This guy's going to attack me. And so he does that a couple more times, and he walks up to me, and he just walks up to me, no talking to me or nothing, and then dives with both of his hands for my gun. And so it changes like that, right?
Yeah, you're thinking this guy's a victim. We're here to help him.
Exactly.
Jeez.
And then dives for my gun. So we go to the ground with the help of the detective and a couple nurses. We get him into custody. And they'll take him to jail for aggravated assault on a police officer. But that was a huge adrenaline jump. Like all of a sudden, I mean, from one to the other, like it was.
Talk about not being prepared for that. I mean, that's.
Yeah. Like, because most of the times when you're in these adrenaline dumps, like, we got like a robbery suspect, or, someone's running from you, or, you're getting in a fight with somebody, but like a rape victim. I got in a fight for my life with a rape victim. It's an alleged rape victim. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's what people criticize police for being so rigid while you're at the beginning of an investigation or a contact. Well, stuff like this happens. Like people who you never think would attack you try to take your life. That's why. That's like, why we act the way we act.
Yeah, like this guy says he got brutally raped with 15 guys. Suddenly tried to take my gun. It makes sense why I tell you to back up. Listen to what I tell you to do. You'll be fine.
Right.
But so whenever someone criticizes me for, even with victims, I keep a bunch of space between me. I'm like, listen, a gang rape victim tried to take my gun, like,
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
not, that was right in the hospital room?
in the middle of the hospital room. Just didn't say anything to me, walked up to me, dove for my gun.
So this guy, he was a head case. He was mental health.
Yeah, he was. And so, well, I can't prove it, but that's what it was. But yeah, that was huge adrenaline dump. And so,
did he go forward with the charges after this? Like, I mean, did he go forward with the investigation? Did he keep that going?
I believe what they did, they ended up dropping the investigation after the DNA came back. And it was like negative for other people's DNA on him. But what was funny is there was other people's DNA inside his clothes. So it's like so probably what happened is, they were borrowing each other's clothes, but like, that's still kind of weird.
Yeah.
So,
that is weird. You don't hear a lot about male on male rape outside of prisons. Especially like a gang rape like that. Like, it's just not that common. I don't know if it's because of how men are sexually, how men are like, men are compared to a woman, men are overly sexually active. That's just the way men are programmed to procreate, And so in the gay culture, I don't think either, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it doesn't seem to get reported a whole lot. Because men, I think, just handle things differently. So when you were saying he was kidnapped and gang raped by 15 men, it doesn't like check out in your mind, because it's like, well, I know gay guys, and they kind of have sex like pretty freely. They don't deny each other a lot. Because it's two guys, it's two male sex drives. So a group of 15 guys wouldn't need to kidnap a gay guy to have sex with a man. You know what I mean? Because they're having giant parties doing this. So it's like, that whole thing is kind of like, that's a really
my first thought is, like, if they, really 15 dudes really rape you, they're probably going to kill you. And so it's like, why would they just drop you off? And these guys, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or, like, why would they even run the risk of being known? Why wouldn't they just, behead the dude? So,
if it was some kind of retribution, why stop there?
Yeah. So,
dude, that is an insane call. You must have thought, like, man, this is crazy. But you do work in a big area, but.
Well, at the beginning, when it happened, I was just mad. I was just mad. I couldn't really put a finger on it. But then I realized it's just because all this adrenaline just dumped, all of a sudden, it wasn't like a build. It was just all of it. And so I put a finger on it, and I was like, okay, that's what it is. I need to go get some kind of snack and just chill out for a minute, and I'll be okay. So,
right.
Yeah.
And how, for situations like that, do you lean on your faith? I know you're a Christian guy. That's got to help you.
Yeah. For that particular situation, that didn't really try me spiritually at all. But there have been other situations where I've like really had to lean on God to, keep me sane.
Yeah.
And so, and what I mean by saying, like, I'm not like schizophrenic or anything crazy, but like, keep me from being really to keep me from being cynical about everything.
Yeah.
I've got some more notes on this written down for later, so we'll get into that.
Okay.
So later questions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have, when you have faith in God, it gives you a worldview and an explanation that makes things make sense. So like it makes processing things, for me anyways, easier that way. At least you're not just like, have some pagan view where like anything, you're totally uncertain, you're agnostic or whatever. So I figured that'd probably help you. All right, brother. Can you tell us about, That was very strange and bizarre. Do you have a strange and bizarre story?
So that on my strange and bizarre scale is about a 6. I have been to, for some reason, where I work is known for wild, crazy stuff happening. And so that's like, if I were to give a list of the top 10 most crazy, wild, bizarre things I've done or been involved in, that's about like 8 or 9. That's not near the top. So this top
lay it on us, brother.
Like, so this is a really, really good one. My first week on my own, I was following around. So the way that our zone works, we have 3 districts that are up north, and they stay together. Those guys do, and they all do their 3 districts together. And then we have 2 guys that are down south for their 2 districts, and they stay together.
Yeah.
Because it's really hard to get up north from down south and vice versa. And the population centers tend to be way up north or way down south. And so you don't want your guys that work the south end to go to the north end and vice versa. Because it's
too far.
You're 20 minutes away running hot. Right. And so I was just following the more experienced officer than I had 10 more months than I did when I was first out. So it was me who had a weekend on my own. His other officer who had 10 months in on his own.
Oh, wow.
We're running the south end of our zone. Right. And so we get a call on this somewhat busy of a road in his district, saying that there was 2 old people calling in saying they wanted a police report because Indians were calling them about a car warranty. And so we get there, and I'm not dispatched to the call, but I just go there because my first weekend, I'm just going to follow this dude around everywhere he goes, just to see what he does in case a call comes up. I didn't see an FTO, right? And so we get there, and it's to, it's Grandma Cornflakes and her husband calling in wanting a police report about these Indian people that they don't know, like saying that these people they don't know are calling in asking them to buy a car warranty. Did you ever get that call? What I'm talking about?
Sure.
It's that scam. Like, it's
classic scam.
Exactly. And so he explains to her, like, we can't do a thing about it. These are people in India. Contact Indian police.
Right.
we really can't do that much.
And people are like, "Can you get the FBI to do it?" I'm like, no, still no.
No, I can't get the FBI to investigate anything.
Right.
So this officer is trying to explain to these 2 90-year-olds that we can't do anything, and it's going on for 10, 15 minutes.
Right.
And dispatch over the radios called me up, and he's like, or the dispatch is like, "Hey, we've got this unknown trouble. Some dude is yelling on the phone about meth at the house behind where you're at."
Meth?
So meth.
Okay.
METH. Yeah.
Yep.
And so how the roads work out here. So we've got this road. This is the main road that we're on. And then this road kind of butts up behind it. And so
runs parallel to it.
Yeah. Well, they meet at the bottom, but we were close enough that I could just walk over to the other side of the road.
Okay.
And so I go and I walk through their backyard to the backyard of the other house. And there's a guy outside working on a motorized tricycle. And I go, "Hey, man, what's going on? Did you call the police?" And he goes, "No, but it could be the people on the other side of the duplex." I'm like, "Okay, it's a duplex now. I didn't know this." So I go to the other side of the duplex, and the door is wide open. And I yell, "Police," And this guy, and no one comes to the door initially. And then I yell again, police. And this guy, 6'2", covered in tattoos, comes up to the front door. He's holding a screwdriver. And this is white guy. He's kind of big, like 230, 240, something like that. And I'm like, hey, man, did you call the police? And he goes, no. I'm like, okay, so you're sure? And he goes, no. Anybody call the police? I'm like, okay, so you're telling me someone called so we got a call saying someone's here yelling about meth. What's going on? And, this is a tangent, but if I had been the officer that I am now, I don't know if I would have questioned him about an unknown 911, right?
Right.
But I'm glad I did because of what happens next. And so what he goes, no, ain't nobody called the police. And I'm like, okay, step outside. So I have him in the yard, and I go, okay, you're telling me no one called the police, but we got a call from dispatch from 911. Some dude's yelling about meth. And he goes, no, and nobody here called the police. As soon as he says that, this guy comes up crawling from into view of the door. Yeah. And he goes, he fucked me up, officer. Fuck him up. And this guy's covered in blood.
Oh, right? My gosh.
And so I pull my taser out on the suspect because he's holding a screwdriver. And once again, you don't know these people. Like, you don't know this guy's some kind of karate jiu-jitsu master.
Right.
So I pull my taser out, and I'm yelling on the radio, I need another unit. I need more people, whatever. So my friend, drops his notebook with grandma cornflakes and runs from across the street or from behind the yard. And I keep my taser on the suspect, get him cuffed up, get him put away. When they searched him, he had some credit cards, and he had a scale and some needles in his pants. Actually, that's important later. Okay. But I'll go over to the victim, and the victim is talking to me. This guy has been stabbed 20 to 30 times in the chest and in the stomach.
Whoa.
He had been scalped, actually like Indian style scalped, right?
Wow.
And his foot was, he had essentially been split down the middle of his shin, bone sticking out and everything.
What?
His foot was hanging, or his shin, like his leg was hanging on with a piece of skin, right? Yeah. Bones out and everything, right?
Whoa.
And I look at him like, holy crap. And so, I need a 20, which means I need an ambulance. And I put a tourniquet on his leg, and I'm like, bro, what's your name? And I go, how you know this guy? And this guy's talking to me. Like, normally these people be like absolutely freaking out,
shocked or something,
because they're lost so much blood.
Right.
This power of meth. And so he's like, man, I'm like, hey man, how you know this guy? And he goes, Facebook. The victim says Facebook. And I'm like, okay, all right. And I'm like, okay, how about your name? What's your name, dude? And he goes, man, I need some water. I need some water real bad, man. I need some water. Like, okay, you know what? You deserve it. I'll get you some water. So I go over to his sink, because it's right next to him, fill up his glass of water, bring it to him. And he takes the water, swigs it around his mouth, and then he spits it all over my pants. And I'm already heated, right? And so I'm like, I yell at him like, bro, what the fuck? And I'm like, he goes, I'm sorry, man. I got a bunch of shit in my mouth. And I'm like, what do you have in your mouth? And he goes, shit. And I'm like, why do you have shit in your mouth? And he goes, that dude took a dildo, put it down my ass, pulled it out, put it down my throat.
Oh my gosh.
And by this time, the ambulance is pulling up. I'm like, oh, buddy, what is going on? Keep in mind,
worst Facebook friend ever.
Yeah, I am a week in on my own, right? And so other officers start getting there. We end up clearing the house. The victim gives us permission to search his house before he gets thrown on the ambulance and taken away. And so we go in, search his house, and find this big meat cleaver, like big meat cleaver. And that is what the dude had used to chop the other guy up with, like cut through his leg.
Yeah.
And we find the dildo, which is like the size of a candle. It is massive. And so it was in the bed, covered by a pillow, covered in blood and crap. You know, it was disgusting. And so
what's wrong with these people?
I know. Well, you're about to find out. So so I go over to the suspect, and the suspect's just laying on the ground. And so it then becomes this interagency fight as to who's going to take the call. So homicide is fighting with sex crimes, is fighting with, I think there was some other investigative unit that they were trying to put in to take it, because no one wants this, right? No one wants to deal with Dildo Man,
Right.
and his cut off leg, right? Eventually, sex crimes comes out and takes it. But my job is to be with the suspect. So the suspect's kind of acting kind of weird. And he's just kind of laying on the ground. And so we get him searched, put him in the back of my car. And I'm still at the crime scene. And then I turn around back to my car. And the way that the Ethernet cords used to be in our cars, when I had a Crown Vic, the Ethernet cord would run from the trunk into the passenger or the back cabin into the front. So I go to this guy, and this guy has literally slipped his cuffs forward and is eating the Ethernet cord between the trunk of my car and the front of my car, like this little section that goes into the little back cabin. He's eating it.
What?
And I'm like, dude, what's going on? Like, what are you doing? He goes, I'm trying to charge my phone. And I'm like, buddy, your phone's with me.
Makes sense.
You're like, what? You can't, this doesn't make sense. So the sex crime detective was like, okay, take him down to headquarters. We're going to question him there. So he's like falling asleep as we get to headquarters. But we get there, and he's full-fledged overdosing when we get to the back of headquarters. And so I call for an ambulance. Ambulance comes out there. I ride in the ambulance with him, and they, Narcan him up. So probably what happened was he was on meth, and they came way down because he also was taking some heroin. That's probably what happened. And so the dude tells us once he's actually, so between that, he had actually had some psilocybin, which is a mushroom, stuffed in his sock, which I missed. And while he was in custody, was able to bring his leg up, grab the psilocybin, and eat it in front of me.
Oh my gosh.
And so, this happens right before he gets interviewed. So he's not hallucinating yet.
Right.
And so basically when the detective comes and interviews him, he says that the reason that that he did it is because he says that the victim is a pedo and like rapes kids and stuff. And so he was giving a taste of his own medicine.
Wow.
And so I didn't really follow the investigation a bunch after that. From what I know, that's true. And when we got permission to search the house, they found like a bunch of child porn on the victim's stuff. Right.
Wow.
Wow. And so, Yeah, that was so. From what I understand, is so the suspect also was a Ghostface member. So from what I understand, it was a hit. They were this guy had basically the victim had raped some whatever year old, and this was a hit for revenge. And so apparently there was like another guy involved in it as well, but I didn't keep up with that investigation, so I don't really exactly know.
Damn, man. What's Ghostface, a local gang?
It's a white supremacist gang. Came out of California, but it's huge in our part of the state.
Really?
So yeah, there's Aryan Nation comes from Tennessee, which is the prison gang. And then Ghostface is kind of like their rival, essentially. Ghostface is more out on the street. So they beef with Aryan Brotherhood. So yeah.
Damn, man. That I can say that is one of the most bizarre calls I've heard on this podcast. Congratulations, sir. That was so freaking bizarre and intense. I mean, damn, man. That was nuts. I can think of a few other guests that came on that told like things that were crazy, but that's got so much to it, so much. I know, so much nuance. It's like, my goodness. You feel a little bit better at the end because if that guy was a patter ass, you're kind of like, well, sometimes that's what happens when you're evil. You know. Damn, man. Woo! All right. Well,
that was my first weekend. I hadn't had much experience, right?
You must have been like, what does this career have in store for me if this is
exactly one? My there was another sergeant that worked in a sector over, and he's like, that's going to be your crazy call. That's going to be the call that you tell everybody is like your wildest call.
You got it out of the way. You did it. Oh my god!
I've had some ones since then that are up there, but that's number one without a question. So,
damn, man, that's intense. Now, do you have any heartwarming stories from your career so far?
So
this is the hardest one for cops. So sometimes they'll tell me one, and then I'm like, that wasn't that heartwarming. It was actually bad.
So this one is also like it's going to sound really, really bad until the very end, and so just be forewarned.
10-4.
So we had gotten a call about a dude laying in a ditch, and so I had gotten moved from the south end of where I worked to the north end. So instead of working with two guys, I'm working with another guy. I'm working with two other guys, right? And so we all three go to this dude laying in a ditch, whatever. So we get there, and there's a dude standing over him. And we're like, what's going on? And the dude basically tells us that this guy had broken into his house and fondled his 6-year-old niece.
Ooh.
And so we're like, oh, okay. And so we put the dude in handcuffs, put him back in the car. And I go to the house and interview the grandmother that was there and the niece. And basically the little 6-year-old says that this guy walked in the front door of the house, went to her room, and she doesn't know this guy at all, right? This guy is homeless, does not know this guy at all.
Terrifying.
Walks to her room, lays down the bed with her, and fondles her. And so the grandma kind of hears something going on. She's the only other person in the house, and they had left their front door unlocked. And so the grandmother comes up, sees what's going on, takes a broom and, gets him out of the house. Because the guy's probably high, whatever. And so he goes outside, and then the uncle of the daughter or the niece, it lives across the street. And so the grandmother yells for the uncle to come across the street, and the uncle comes over there. She yells to him what's going on, and they get in a huge fight, and the uncle beats the crap out of this guy.
Nice.
And so by that time, we get on scene because a third party had called this in, right?
Right.
They didn't call the police. A third party called in about the dude laying in a ditch. They didn't call it a fight. They just saw a dude laying in a ditch. Apparently they were driving by and saw that. So called it in. And so terrible thing to happen to the girl. In fact, the dude actually tried to break into the house next door to where they were previously, which was occupied by a bunch of first generation Chinese immigrants. And they, in the best English they could, explain to me that they were like, this dude was kicking on their door and everything, and they chased him away with a sword.
Nice.
But they come out. So they give their little statement, the Chinese immigrants do. The bigger, more important statement is with the actual victim of what happened. And the uncle tells us all that the uncle, I don't believe I'd arrested him before, but he was a regular customer, like the people that we arrest, and
right.
He said that it was the first time he had ever been happy. Yeah, he said that it was the first time he had ever been happy to see the police, but we take this dude into custody. The dude starts yelling he needs an ambulance, so we call an ambulance out there, and it was like, this dude's fine. And so we take him to jail. And the heartwarming part of it is, so a few weeks later, so with victims like, child victims and true victims, not people that, they're both constantly, the classic domestic where both of them are always getting arrested.
Right.
True victims, kids. I will at least try to follow up with them at some point, because that's super traumatic. You're a 6-year-old and you get fondled by a stranger that broke into your house.
It's like every parent's worst nightmare.
Exactly. The only thing worse is the kid got killed, right? And so It's awful. And so I would go follow up with the victim, and she proceeds to tell me that, like, she had just gotten done testifying in court that day, and she had drawn pictures of us, and she wants to be a police officer because of how we had saved her at that time. It was I don't really see myself as the one that saved her. I see more the uncle that really did the got the dude out the house. But she's like, she wants to be a cop now. She really loves the police. Always whenever I drive by her house now, like, she'll like wave at me and whatever.
That's awesome. I'm glad she gravitated towards the police rather than like doing a picture of like some white trash guy with a cape on. Like, I want to be a white trash man.
Yeah. And so, but that's really heartwarming because
absolutely,
it's awful what happened to her, but that was probably the one time I have cried on the job was she had talked to me and like said thank you, and I was like, oh man, don't say anything to me. So
yeah, absolutely. So that's a win. Oh man. Yeah. Bill, can you popular question we have on the show here, and I've had you over an hour, so just one more question for you before I let you go. Advice to new police officers, candidates looking to get into the field.
So I have like 7 little tidbits I've written down.
Great.
And some of them are like things that, that other cops, I think the last one I've heard multiple times beforehand. But here are some other stuff that like people really don't bring up. In ascending order, number 7 is when you have the chance, go to the bathroom. Because you don't
absolutely.
know. When you don't know, like you don't know what's coming next, right?
Yep.
And so you could be a 4-hour long call, and it will be really awkward for you to be at a suicide. Like, hey, can I use your restroom?
Yeah.
Like
don't hold the poop in.
Or whatever. You go to the bathroom. That's number 7.
Yes.
Number 6 is don't drive stupid. We are the police, but that doesn't mean that you can drive 100,000 miles an hour wherever you go.
Right.
And so it reflects badly upon you, and it's not safe. So,
yeah. And you're in a car with your agency name all over it. Exactly.
And I know some cops have an issue with that, and it's like, do I speed? Yes. But it's something I'm working on myself to not drive dumb.
Right.
5, cook your own food. You need, as a cop, I'm especially susceptible to like fried food and stuff. If I have fried food and then I get in a fight, I'm throw it all up. And so, just for your nutrition, cook your own food. 4, invest your money. As police officers, we don't get paid a ton. And so, you can always go without just a little bit to invest for your family.
Yep.
And so, you don't want to have the added stress of financial woes on top of all the stress that comes with the job. Right.
Absolutely.
Number 3, spend time with your family. That's very important. I have a wife and I've got a 1-year-old. And so, it's, I could work 80 hours a week, but that's to keep me sane. I need to spend time with my family. And if I'm an absent parent, then my kid's going to end up like the people I deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I can't do that.
Cop's kid is a thing. Oh, cop's kid. They're always screwed up. Absolutely.
Yeah. Number 2 is exercise. That is my therapy. That helps me out so much.
Yep.
So you have to be out there exercising. These people are out there fighting and training and boxing and whatever, and you have to be ready for when you got to handle business. And number 1, for me is go to church, be involved spiritually, because if you go into police work and you don't believe in anything, then you can become a cynic because you believe that nothing matters.
Right.
And, you don't have a heart. Eventually you don't have a heart for the 6-year-old that gets fondled by a stranger. Right.
Yeah,
if you just believe
take
it
you down.
Yeah. Like, there's a bunch of evil in the world, or, you can just become so depressed and like become like an alcoholic or whatever with all the terrible stuff you see every day. And so, and if you go around believing that, some of this is like your fault, like you can't do that. You need to have some kind of spiritual system going on. I would say you need to be a Christian. More specifically, I would say you need to be a liturgical Christian, but that what matters is you need to have some kind of good world view with a capital G. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Baptism, body in the blood, the whole deal.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I say that on the show as often as I can. Jesus Christ is our Lord and Savior, and it can save your life. It can completely, the scales will fall off your eyes, and the world can make sense if you can get there, So I really appreciate you numbering those like that. That was cool. I like that. I like the slow burn, the countdown. That was awesome, man. Thank you for putting so much thought into that.
Yeah.
Bill, fantastic episode, man. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Hey, it's been a pleasure.
And if this is 2 years, then 4 years, got to come back. Tell some more of these.
Yeah. I had a couple more wild stories written down, but we've been here an hour, so I don't want to make this a 2 hour long podcast. So
yeah, well, I'd love to have you back, man. There was great stories, man. Damn.
Yeah.
All right, brother. Hey, I'm gonna do the outro and throw you in the green room for a second. Then can you hang out for a moment?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Episode 110. Holy cow! Wow. Crazy ass stories. Awesome stories. Thank you so much to Bill for sharing those with us coming on. Thank you guys for all the support. Thank you for the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. Please, if you haven't done that, go there. Do that for me. I appreciate it. If you want extra content, you want to be a little more involved in the show, and you're truly a fan and want to show your support, Patreon is the place to do it. There'll be a link in the show notes, and also thingspolicec.com. Click donate. That will bring you to the Patreon. Also, 2 tiers, patrolman and sergeant. They both offer different things, but they both offer some kind of inside baseball on the show, a little bit more direct contact with me, and some more content I think you will enjoy. Yeah, guys, appreciate you being here as always, and I will catch you next time.